Well, it's so good to have Rob on. How you doing today, Rob?
Oh, fantastic.
Great to have you on. Looking forward to this interview and the topic we're going to cover because I think it's an important topic in our culture. So I'm looking forward to seeing what insights you have for me and my audience.
Well, great.
I love to ask my guests this question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, boy. There's so many good pieces of advice I've received. Um, right now, I've been praying and meditating on, you have to walk your own walk. You
Mm,
have to be your authentic self. And right now, I believe, you have to have focus on compassion and understanding. So that's been my walk lately. So I think that's probably the best piece of advice I've had is just you got to walk your own walk.
I love that. Who shared that with you? Remember where it came from?
I don't. There's been so many great people in my life that have influenced me. It's funny when you look at success and people say, "Oh, you're self-made" or something, and it's like, no, I've been molded by a lot of good people.
Yeah, that's good. Speaking of that, you kind of segue nice to the next question. Who are some role models in your life or mentors along your journey that stand out about how they impacted you? And maybe just kind of share what about them stood out to you.
Well, right now, first person that comes to mind is Pastor Ray Townsend. He he works at Exodus, and um, he really, you know, he came to Exodus. He was a retired Methodist pastor. Um, I segued from finance and real estate development and business into the nonprofit world, and Pastor Ray was a nuclear engineer, and so he was he went to living out of his mind, brain all the time to then having to be living out of his heart, and then he saw me, and so he's helped mentor me. So that's been a blessing. My father, Abraham Lincoln, I was born on February 12th. So I've always been passionate about equal rights, freedom of rights to people and compassion there. And so that, Abraham Lincoln, and then just, my father. And so I guess I have quite a few more than just one.
That's great. I love that. So tell us your journey of how you got from where you are, where you started, and where you are right now, and what you're doing right now.
Well, yeah, my journey's kind of unique. Everybody has a unique story, though, I think. Um, I, I ended up going to, school in a small, Michigan town. In Charlotte, we were just talking about earlier, Charlotte in Michigan. It was Charlotte, North Carolina. And then I moved, my parents moved and ended up in even a smaller town called Springport. And I graduated with, I think, 46 kids in my class.
Wow.
And so I had a small town mentality, and then uh, wanted to get out of there. So ended up going into the Army military college and became an officer in the Army. And then met my bride in college, and then we ended up moving to Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was considerably larger. And I ended up, my passion had always been really real estate and finance. So I ended up growing a real estate brokerage firm, and then ultimately ended up starting to develop land and building houses. I was flipping houses before it was on TV. I tease people, and I say, in fact, I was driving a Ford Bronco, the full size ones, you know, uh, before it was popular to drive four-wheel drive trucks too. So I'm kind of a country guy put into a big city. So um, my mentality and personality was more, small town. and developed my company and developed a finance company to a pretty good size nationally, and developed a couple thousand lots and commercial buildings and everything. But my real turn was when I stopped in 2007 to help Tim McCann. He was a homeless guy that was holding a sign up saying, "I'll work for food."
Mm.
And it was a Saturday morning. I was out getting some parts for ATVs and stuff before the kids and wife were up. And it was one of these, Michigan, we have these gray days. I don't know if you have them in Iowa, but I mean, you can't really tell the difference from a cloud and, I mean, it's just gray and raining. And
Right.
this poor guy was out there. And so I pulled over, started talking to him. I said, "You work for food?" And he says, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Tell you what, if you're here on Monday, I'll pick you up after my business meeting, and then I will put you to work, and I got some housing, so I'll put you in a studio apartment." And swear to God, I went to church the next day and prayed to God he wasn't going to be there. So I was like, what did I just commit to? Because, at that time had several real estate projects going, and then my finance business, and and then I have 4 kids, and, all the personal stuff. And sure as heck, next day he's standing on the corner with his backpack and his duffel bag. So I picked him up, and I thought I was going to be the white knight where I was helping him. I was feeling
Right.
pretty good because, financially things were going well, and family wise things went well. And so I thought, boy, oh boy, I'm going to, I'll lift him up. Well, after about 10 days and hearing his story, I realized God put him in my life. If I didn't get put in his life, I mean, God put him in my life to lift me up. So he worked for me about 6, 8 weeks. Then he started drinking. And at that point I said, "Hey, Tim, I'm not set up, you know, to handle that. At most I'd have 5 employees in my company. We had a lot of subcontractors and vendors into the hundreds, but, our overall operation wasn't big enough where I'd have an HR department that I could, work with him, or, so I got him into a rescue mission. And then he called me 2 days later and he says, "Hey, Rob, they said I need a mentor." And, I'm not really super smart. I said, "Well, that's great." That part was smart, but I said, "That's a good idea." And he goes, "Yeah, I want you to be my mentor." And I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I don't go downtown." At that time we lived on about 40 acres, and, I'm more comfortable on a Kubota tractor doing, projects. And even though I had bigger things, I always enjoyed kind of not going downtown big towns. So I ended up being his mentor, and which really was taking him to church every Sunday, and, picking him up, and he'd have lunch with my wife and family. And then ultimately the board of directors of the rescue mission asked me to be on the board, which I had turned them down 5 times. And then they had a luncheon, and like, I'm pretty dang slow a lot of times, and they take me to this luncheon, and there's a guy that's doing his testimony about, how his life's changed. And, well, shoot, at that point I said yes. Okay. And my background, remembers finance.
Right.
I didn't ask to look at the P&L, or profit and loss, or the balance sheet. I just said yes. So it was a heart moment. Get there, within about 4 months, find out they're financially really insolvent, and they've been around for over 40 years. And their building, they had told me their building was paid off. However, they forgot to tell me that they had a line of credit that was maxed. And they had, so executive director resigns. Um, at this point, I see my opening. I figure, hey, I've done my God thing with Tim. Tim's already left the mission. Um, and, and I've been on the board of a rescue mission. I figure, hey, I'm going back to my normal life and I'm good because I just said, hey, we probably should just close this place down, sell the building, pay off all the debts, and distribute the proceeds to another nonprofit. And the executive directors asked me to. I was actually out hopping into my 4x4, Tahoe, and they said, "Hey, you know who should run this place?" Still had no clue, and they said, "You should." So I ended up running the rescue mission. Within 3 weeks, we're out of money, out of cash, or out of. I mean, we couldn't even cover payroll. The water company was going to shut off the water once the power got shut off.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up turning around the mission, paid off pretty much the whole line of credit. And during this time, there was this building from Michigan Department of Correction that they had vacated and some investors had owned, which is now Exodus Place.
Oh, wow.
And I had it set to be donated to the rescue mission through a very large corporate donation. And the board of directors says, "Hey, you just got us out of the fire. We're in the skillet right now. We're not looking to get back in the fire." So
Right.
I my journey is I'm thinking, great, I can get out of this. I've done Tim. I've been on the board. I've saved the rescue mission. I've done my good thing. I'm going back to my normal life where, I get to go on these long vacations, Ritz Carlton and cruises and stuff. And so I resigned because the board turned the donation down, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm good. And about 2 weeks later, I'm out with dinner with my wife, and yeah, it was unbelievable. I'm not really a crier, but all of a sudden I started crying, and it was as if the Holy Spirit just hit me and said, I needed to do this. And this was 2009, highest bankruptcy, highest foreclosure, highest unemployment. I mean, this was not the time. And then it's for men. I mean, the building's
Right.
really set up with those gang bathrooms, so it's only for like men or women, and I knew men, so it was men. And I'm like, men aren't cute and cuddly. So I'm like, this is bad, and my wife just looked at me. She goes, I think you should do it. I said, this is absolutely insane. This is probably most likely going to fail. And she goes, you look convicted, Rob. I mean, this is what you should do. And I ended up starting Exodus Place. The first name was Exodus Building. We're across the river in Grand Rapids, so the rescue missions and the community services are all on the east side, and we're on the west side. So the guy says, hey, this is exiting, um, you know, our old way of life, and we're coming into the new way. And so
Interesting.
yeah, it was a crazy ride. And the thing is we leased the building. I leased it for $100 a month with the agreement to assume their nearly $300,000 in back taxes. They said, hey, as long as you raise enough money to pay the back taxes off, we'll work with you. But if it starts to look like you can't keep up with the back taxes and eventually get them paid off, we're we're going to pull the plug. And so, and then the building had been flooded. So,
Ooh,
so
no.
yeah, it was probably the worst of the worst. So, worst economy, probably the worst demographic. I mean, I would have rather had puppies, kittens, or, orphans or widowed women. But here I'm dealing with men, and then they're coming out of prison. So, back then, prisoners or felons that got out of prison, it was really difficult for them to get jobs. So everything was stacked against me, and the whole organization. But ultimately, we ended up as a team. And this is where, like you mentioned, with the wisdom, there's been a lot of people in my life to give me wisdom. And the men and myself, we had our job roles, but we always respected each other's opinion and advice. And ultimately, we became the largest transitional housing facility in the state of Michigan.
Wow, what a story. As I think about your journey, can you tell us kind of you kind of touched on you're working with men. What is the
Yes.
mission of Exodus Place? If you were trying to find what are you trying to accomplish with those men? Because you had the trifecta: bad economy, um, working with men, ex-cons. I mean, there were so many things stacked against you. So what are you trying to accomplish with these men and trying to help transform their lives?
Our clear goal is a hand up instead of a handout. And with that, creating a foundation. Some of the foundational items is, one, there's no violence in our facility. If
Mm,
there's violence, you're removed. I mean, you can cuss every once in a while because of they're going through tough times, and so there's frustration. But there's no violence. And to today, right now, I think it's been over 2 years since we've had a skin to skin, where somebody's punched somebody. We have 135 men. It's hard to accomplish that at deer camp, with like
right.
5 guys. So, but our mission is a hand up instead of a handout. So we don't fit not everybody fits our program. So if you have severe alcohol issues or drug addictions, you're not going to fit our program because our program's more on the light side. We're working with you. So let's just say you're a heavy drinker and you say, hey, I know I have a problem and I need to start getting off of it. We have enough uh, help with our counselors and our pastors and our medical team to help, kind of wean people off that way. But we're not a severe addiction facility.
Sure. As you think about what you're doing, there are a lot of misconceptions about homeless people, and I think you ran across it when you met your first homeless person.
Yep.
What are things that maybe society, when they see the problem, aren't getting or understanding about the homeless situation most people find themselves in?
Thing that bothers me the most is the generalization. Um, I've heard home challenged, homeless, unhomed. They're all labels. And,
Right.
it, and if you start calling the person by name, Jerry, Joe, Jim, and realize that they are actually a person, and not generalize, all of a sudden it takes on a different role on how you're looking at solutions. Because if we're just looking at the homeless, well, let's put like California. I think they put was it 24 or 34 billion dollars into the homeless last year, and money's not going to cure it. It assists in coming out with a desired outcome, but just throwing money at things, there's a lot of programs that are ineffective, that aren't getting measured, and they go like what I say. People that are not familiar with the lifestyle and the needs, will create this program thinking, well, this will help them. Well, and then they forget to ask the homeless person, and it's a person, what they need. Um,
Right.
Good example, we got kind of got through a lot of rough stuff, and we're stabilized to a point where I said, hey, we have a nice budget and we have a nice plan right now. We're not at risk of losing the building. I said, we're going to have a steak dinner. Okay, this is coming from me with a full mouth of teeth.
Right.
Guess what happened? I got so many complaints that I had a steak dinner. And these were all great, big old steaks, fillets, ribeyes, T-bones. They could pick anything they wanted. They could order any. They absolutely hated it. And I said, what's up? And they go, I got 2 teeth in my head, man. He says, how am I going to eat steak? And, and so, that disconnect.
Right.
So and that's where, I think if we focus on a relationship with the homeless and ask them what they need, we can help them far better and greater than what I can. If it's all in my mind of what's a solution, it's not going to work. But together, I keep finding together, we always find the best solution together, not just one person trying to impose my ideas and my thoughts on another person.
So I can't get that picture out of my head. So our approach to homelessness is we're offering steak dinners to people with no teeth, and we're wondering why it's not working. That's interesting because I remember working with a particular community. It was all Hispanic, and working with a congregation who wanted to reach out to them. So they wanted to celebrate Cinco de Mayo with that community, thinking this is how we could relate to them. Well, they didn't serve what would typically fit a Mexican community. They served brats and sauerkraut. And I'm like, so you talk about disconnect. It's like, that really isn't understanding your community. And I think it's really kind of a widespread problem I see whenever there is an issue in a community, if you don't talk to the people that are directly impacted by your great ideas, then you don't really understand what their needs are.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. So think about just your community. What have you found to be the most effective way to help the homeless in the Grand Rapids area? Which I love Grand Rapids, by the way. I heard that I've been there a couple of times, and I know that you are now the microbrewery capital of the world. But that's a side note. Which,
Oh yeah. I use rescue missions like to rest on John 3:16, and I rest on John 3:17. Christ came to have a relationship with us and not to judge us. And I'm paraphrasing that, but it's pretty darn
right.
close. Our secret at Exodus is relationship. Every time that we try to just execute things more in a binary way, it's like, hey, this is what needs to get accomplished. Without a relationship, it fails.
Right.
When we start developing a relationship, and there's some, it's a difficult situation. We get some guys in that are severe bipolar schizophrenic and delusional, and so it takes a bit with our medical team, our case managers, outside case managers, to connect with that person. But relationship is the number one factor. It's people say, well, you have a big building, that's easy, and they go, it's we can build all these apartments for the homeless. We can put them all in there, and it's going to fail. And people say, well, no, housing first, that's the right way to go. And it's like, no, you get somebody that's bipolar schizophrenia or has been homeless out in a tent for so long, really there's a lot community there, and then you isolate them into an apartment. The isolation gets so loud in their head that they leave the apartment and they go down to the soup kitchen or the rescue mission because that's where they're at. They're used to. So it's that relationship is more critical than housing. Housing, we can figure it out. I mean, housing, we have a classroom that's 20 by probably 35 feet long. I said I can put probably 30 people in there. I can house them easy. I can feed them easy, but I can't have a relationship with them easy. And that's where the secret sauce is in curing our homelessness.
So as I think about what you're saying, it looks like we need to figure out a way to deal with individual needs, but we're not scaled to
Right.
do that. Excuse me. And so how do I think we like the idea of like have just one mass solution, but we're not scaled for relationships. And so you're right, we're going to have difficult times understanding that every single homeless person has a different unique situation and circumstance. So if you had a message, I guess, for those who's like, this is something that's been on my heart, I've been watching it on TV, it's burning in my heart, what advice would you have for a community or a church that says, we want to do something with the homeless population? Where would they start?
Um, Really meet one of the homeless peoples and find out what their name is. Um, Ask questions. Don't. I bring people into Exodus, and they're successful people, and I love them. They're great friends and great people. They jump in with solutions,
Right.
and and I'm like, okay, do you know where this guy's coming from? Or because we're dealing with men, and oh yeah, I go, okay, all your bills are paid. Do you ever worry about food? Nope. Do you ever worry about, wanting to get drunk or high tonight? Well, no. Do you have 3, 4 kids that you can't afford and they might be all in different adult foster care or, out throughout the, area? No. So your solution fits your demographic. So I would suggest always uh, sit down with somebody that's challenged and ask them, take some time, ask a lot of questions. We don't have to come up with solutions right away, and see where they're at. Ask them their story, kind of like what you're doing with me today. Is do a mock interview and say, hey, what's gone on in your life? I met with a relatively famous person here that ended up going to prison. And I said, okay, what happened in your life? And he told me what happened as a child. And I said, oh, he goes, nobody asked me about that. They're just asking me
Mm,
about what I did. And I
right.
said, well, there's always a story behind how you got there. Like for the churches or for somebody that wants to go out into the community, find out where the person grew up. Find out what happened with their parents, their aunts, uncles, um, um, their mental health. And people don't like to talk about mental health, but we'll talk about biological, the flu or COVID. But the reality is our brain gets like a flu at times too. If you don't have enough sleep at night, you're not quite on your game. And that doesn't mean you're mentally ill, but you're mentally challenged to figure out complex problems. So to ask some of those questions of seeing where they're at, that's a lot better than coming with all the answers and um, for answers that you might give them answers that really aren't going to fix any problems.
I love that. That's really true. It reminds me of some video I saw uh, where somebody's like, here we come with all the answers, but no one's really asking those questions. So,
Exactly. I'm working on a large multi. I do my real estate development. I have my company, and then I also have Access Place, and I've been toying with a big multifamily project I'm doing, and uh, this morning I realized I'm not asking the right questions
Right.
because there's some just with land development and then building, and there's a lot of factors and less complex than a human being. But I realized I wasn't asking the right questions, and since I wasn't asking the right questions, I knew I was going down the wrong road. It's, and then I don't know about you, but you go to the wrong direction. It's not much, it doesn't happen much with GPS, but have you ever gone down the wrong direction and then you
Oh yeah.
go, oh, I've wasted all this time, this money. I feel stupid that's how I feel, stupid. And then you got to backtrack, and and if I had asked better questions or asked directions, my wife would say ask directions, but fortunately I have GPS now. You can probably remember when you had to ask for directions, or I had a map, paper map. But you got to ask those really, really good questions to help the person that you're helping or helping yourself.
Exactly. I'm curious, Rob. This is a fascinating conversation, but I'm curious in terms of where you're at today. What are you excited about in this season of your life?
Um, I'm excited about our I'm excited about our current problem because I see our current problem is um, we have a lack of acknowledging humanity right now.
Hmm.
People are hating on people. I mean, if I say one wrong thing, well, I don't like this guy at all. Or,
Right.
and, hey, I'd love to go out for ice cream with Biden. I think Trump should probably be in the basement with some of his ideas and take his Twitter account or X account away. Um, there's something good in everybody, um, and and I can focus on the good and not focus on the bad. Um, we have to acknowledge some of the bad, but to focus on the good. And where I'm seeing things go, Keith, is we're getting such a huge problem with the cancel culture that I believe that it's going to ultimately change around where people are like, you know what, we're tired of this. This noise has gotten too bad. And I'm excited that humanity is going to really start coming back where people go, you know what? That person slipped up what he said. I know that person. He didn't mean that. And I'm not going to hate on him. And so I think our problem now with humanity being so commoditized and so I guess just spiteful and hateful towards people, I think it's going to get to a point where it's boiling over and people are going to start going back towards humanity and saying, you know what? It's just not comfortable to take that hate on and that, whether it's Fox, you get the Fox News camp, you get the MS, NBC camp. I mean, I think where I'm at right now that I'm super excited for is humanity come in and get some more understanding and showing love and compassion to people.
And that would be a nice switch because it is getting a little tiresome.
Oh, isn't it?
I know.
I was I've traveled to Europe the last couple of years, and and I was in Spain, Italy, Paris, London, uh, the general person there that's just traveling, whether they're from the US or from native country, they're tired of the political and the news. And they go, and when you start talking to them, and they go, we really just want to get along.
Right.
And so the whole world's like this. I mean, it's not just the United States. We'd like to think the United States is the only country in the world, but the reality is we have 8 billion people on this planet, and most of them want to get along and work together.
Right. Exactly. I'm curious, Rob. I love to ask my guests this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Um, Helping the people, and it doesn't have to be homeless, really help anybody that I'm in contact with to become a better person so that they enjoy their life better and then make a positive influence on other people's lives.
I like that. So, as we wrap up our conversation, what key takeaways do you want the audience to get from our discussion?
Look for the relationship with people, um, and and we don't always have to be judging them in a negative way, but really look for that relationship first, because that's the critical thing. And if you're in business or nonprofit, it's funny, my businesses thrive because I focus on the relationship with my subcontractors, my customers, my tenants, everybody. I'm I'm so focused on relationship and being a peacekeeper and trying to um, lift them up, that ultimately that relationship is, I mean, that's such a secret to my business right now and my nonprofit, is that relationship and seeing who they are.
That's awesome. Where can people find you, and where can they find the Exodus Place to learn more about what your ministry is, and also if they want to talk to you, connect with you, figure out how they can do it in their own location?
Oh, definitely. It's www.exodusplace.org, and somebody can fill out a contact form. Then I have my own personal website, which is Robb, ROBBMUNGER.com. And and so you can check me out both places and just see what we're doing. And
Well, Rob, thanks so much for this conversation. Thanks for what you do, how you pour into men's lives and hopefully transform their lives and get them on the right track. Because I think what you're doing gives us hope that we can solve a problem that looks insurmountable to solve.
oh, definitely. Thank you. I appreciate this, Keith.
Thank you.